Hello and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Charlotte Lakin and I'm a trainee solicitor at a media and entertainment company. So today I'm going to talk you through some of the differences I've noticed between working in-house and working in private practice. So some of you will already know that I worked in private practice before I moved over to working in-house, and there are a number of differences. And so I'm going to just go through some of the things that I've identified in the time that I've been working in-house, and hopefully that will help you if you're moving from private practice to in-house. So one thing you'll notice when you move from private practice into in-house is that you work for one client as opposed to several. Now, that's not to say that you won't get instructions from different parts of the business, because that's something that happens to me on a regular basis, that one day you may be instructed by, let's say, content or digital or marketing, and they will be your various stakeholders where you take instructions from on parts of the business that need legal advice. So you still work on several, chances are you'll still work on several different matters and different parts of the business. I certainly do as a trainee. I have been have like a seat in brands and IP, and doing some data protection work, and also working on commercial and programming, so commercial agreements. So there's still a lot of variety. In fact, I would probably argue that there's actually more variety working in-house, because you have to pick up so many different things and have to get your instructions from so many different parts of the business. But I would say that instead of working for several different clients, you will be working for one, and that is the business. They are your client. One thing to consider when you get instructions from various parts of the business is that you should look at the business as a whole. And it may be the case that one part of the business wants to do something that actually may have a knock-on effect to another part of the business, and so your legal advice might be different. For example, let's say you have been approached by part of the business to advise on a dispute that has arisen between them and a company. Now, it may not be that part of the business that manages that relationship. That part of the business may have a relationship with this company, but that company may have a wider interest and relationship with another part of the business. And the question then becomes the advice that you give, because the legal options that you may give may vary, and what they want to do may vary because of that wider relationship. And perhaps that part of the business that's instructed you hasn't considered that. And as being part of legal, you may have had an opportunity to engage with other parts of the business, and therefore can give not only legal advice but also commercial advice as to whether they've considered approaching this other part of the business. Have they considered whether they want to burn bridges with that company, or whether there's a wider commercial aspect here that they need to consider. So legal offer legal advice, but we also offer commercial advice. That leads me on to my next point. There is one major change when you move from private practice into in-house, and I am guessing you probably already know what that is, but wait for it. Drum roll, please. Yes, you have guessed it. It is time recording. Time recording is a thing that we generally don't do in-house. To say that I've never done it in-house would be a lie, because I have. At two places I've worked, I have had to, for a brief period of time, record my time and the work that I did. To be honest, it's something I'm quite grateful that I don't have to do in-house. I generally like to spend most of my time actually doing work rather than spending time saying what work I did. Although when you end up doing your training contract, you end up doing the training log and logging things anyway, but in a different kind of way. The purposes is different. The purpose of time recording in private practice is so that when you come to bill your client, you can show what time you spent and what you spent it on. So what it involves is a little description of the work you did, and in private practice you time record in units, so 6 minutes is 1 unit. The reason they do that because in an hour, it's easy, do the math, that is 10 units, and that's how you can easily do it throughout the day, and you can demonstrate to the partner and to your client how you have been spending your time on the work they needed you to do. So that is time recording in a really quick nutshell. And hopefully in the future I will do like a proper video on that and how it works in private practice. But in-house, generally speaking, it is not something that we do. My experience of time recording in-house has been for a different reason. It's not for billing purposes. It has been purely to illustrate the kinds of work I've been doing, how long I've spent on those sorts of matters or for those different departments, and to sort of generally see how the business instruct us and how legal operate as well, whether we're using a good use of our time, for example, if we are spending it on sort of low value work, or whether it's been high value work, and how much time we've spent on in between. And so that's been a way to reevaluate our resources and how legal should be operating within the business. So it's been for a very different reason. It's not been for external billing. It has been for reevaluating our resources internally. And so if you are ever asked to do time recording in-house, that's probably what it's for. But generally speaking, it is not something that we do. And for me, that's a good thing, because I find that it sort of just frees up a lot more time. I find time recording quite painful exercise, if I'm honest. But it's something that you just have to do in private practice. So yes, I think it's one of those things, once you get your head around it and you get used to doing it and it becomes something you know very well, it's probably not so bad. In-house, we don't really have the resources of a time recording management system, so when I have had to do it, it's literally been writing down by the hour what I've been doing and sort of having like a stopwatch somewhere. In private practice, they generally have like a proper recording system where, yes, there's a clock, and you may be able to allocate it to different matters and then slot it in somewhere, and just it's a lot easier rather than probably doing it manually, which is what I've done when I've done it in-house. So for those who are moving from private practice into in-house, and if you don't like time recording, you'd be glad to know it generally is not something you have to do. It's generally not part of your daily life. So yeah, hopefully that will be like a plus side to going in-house for some people. Another difference between working in private practice and in-house is that normally when you are instructed in private practice, you're instructed because they need legal advice, because generally it's because something has gone wrong or they want to do something. So they've decided internally what they want to do, more often than not, and they're instructing you because they want you to make it happen, legally speaking. So it's a very different conversation when you work in-house. Generally, in-house lawyers like to be involved at the start of a business decision. The reason being is that at the start, we can assess any legal risks or legal issues that might be presented before they make any decision on what they want to do commercially. because there may be certain risks or issues, legally speaking, that might actually make it more difficult or may make it less commercially viable. And therefore it's worth involving legal at the start rather than at the end, when you've already committed to doing something and then subsequently find out that actually it's a lot more difficult to go through with than first envisaged. So it's always good to have the key players around the table at the start of a business decision, and I do think that legal is one of those. But generally, as an in-house lawyer, you'll also find that more often than not we are firefighting because we do not get involved at the conception stage. We tend to be involved a little bit later on or at the absolute latest point, sometimes also when things go wrong. So I think that that's one difference between working in private practice and in-house, is that in-house lawyers generally get consulted earlier and may actually have an influence in what the business decides to do in the business decision. And sometimes they can solve things internally, and generally in private practice, lawyers only get consulted more often than not for their expertise in a certain matter, and they don't get the whole picture of what's actually going on internally within the business. They just are being asked for their legal advice more often than not, whereas an in-house lawyer is asked more often than not for commercial and legal advice. And that's what a good in-house lawyer can do. They can offer the legal advice, but they can also offer the commercial advice. And so personally, I've found that working as an in-house lawyer has been more exciting for me on that basis, that I get to get involved in the earlier stages and actually have an input in what the business does. In-house, you get to see the whole picture, whereas in private practice you only get to see a small part of it, the part that you are involved in, be it in giving some advice on a litigious issue that's arisen or on a real estate issue that has come up, whereas legal in-house may have oversight of all the different kinds of legal issues that might arise, and may go externally to somebody in private practice to give their input because they specialise in a certain area that the in-house lawyer does not know the ins and outs of, but can give the initial advice on certain aspects and consult externally as and when we need expert advice. An in-house lawyer will give both legal and commercial advice. The reason being is that because they understand the business. The problem with private practice sometimes I find is that they don't know the business. They work for so many different clients, and so therefore each client is different, and their business needs are different, and you won't know what we are doing internally, whereas an in-house lawyer will know all of the different aspects to a business, and what the business goals are. And so the value an in-house lawyer can give is greater than a external lawyer working in private practice. That's not to say that private practice lawyers do not offer a lot of great value, because they do. An in-house lawyer generally will have a lot be involved in so many different things that we don't always have the absolute expertise in everything. It's just not possible to have that, and so therefore going externally we can really get the value when we need it for specific issues. And so that's one thing to note when you go from private practice to in-house, is that you may learn about loads of different things, and may still also need to consult externally to people in private practice to give that expert advice. But one thing caveat to that is that when you work in private practice, you won't see the whole picture. An in-house lawyer will know what the business goals are, what is driving potentially a commercial decision, whereas when we go to private practice lawyers to give us advice, they will only be consulting generally on one aspect that we're asking them to look at for their expertise. And so they don't necessarily know everything that we are doing as a business and what our business goals are, and so therefore their advice will literally be legal more so than it is commercial. And there's where the value is added by having an in-house lawyer who will know the business and will be able to add not just provide not just legal advice but also the commercial advice, which gives them that extra value that they can't get from somebody externally. In private practice, you will be asked to give legal advice, and normally they will use a belt and braces approach and give you so much legal advice that sometimes it can kind of get lost on what the commercial objective is. And so therefore that is what the in-house lawyer will add. It's not about just giving the legal advice, it's about understanding whether that is right commercially. Also, it's about understanding that sort of risk-based approach. Some things may be high risk and some things may be low risk. And the question from a private practice point of view, you just want to give the legal advice and be like, yes, you can do this, or no, you can't do this. In-house, it's a little more difficult in the sense that it's not just a yes or no. Sometimes it's like, okay, well, this is high risk and this is low risk, but generally the business will decide whether it wants to do something or not do something. But what you can do is give your legal input and say, this is what it is legally speaking, but it's for the business generally to decide whether it does something or it doesn't do something based on the advice you give. But it's giving them the enough information to give them the best opportunity to make that call, because we don't make that call. Legal do not make that call, generally speaking. We just give the advice in order to help them decide what they want to do. So that is definitely a difference that I would say between working in private practice and in-house, is that in private practice you will literally go by the letter of the law, no, you can't do this, or yes, you can do something. In-house lawyer will generally say, well, this is what the legal position is, and this is low risk or high risk. It's for you to decide what you want to do based on the legal advice that we have given you. Another thing I would recommend if you are looking to go in-house is to really know the industry in which the business operates. So have a think about any legislation that's being brought in that might affect the business. Have a think about if the company is regulated by a certain body, if any recent cases that might affect the way your business operates, or any regulations that are being brought in that might affect the business. Have a think about any market trends, have a look about what is affecting competitors that might then affect your business as well. It's having an understanding of not just being able to offer legal advice when you need to, but understanding what is going on around you as well, that might have an effect on the business. And I think that's really important, to really take an interest in the business and what it does and the industry in which it operates in. I think that will certainly make you a better in-house lawyer. And for anyone who is looking to go from private practice to in-house, I certainly recommend that as something you invest your time in to look at, because it will add a lot of value if you really understand the business and the industry it operates in. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you found this video useful and now know some of the differences between working in private practice and in-house. I'm sure there's probably plenty more, but there's the ones that I have for you now. If there's anything you'd like to see, please let me know. My socials will appear at some point soon, and if you'd like this video, please like it and subscribe if you want to be notified of any other videos that I upload as and when they get uploaded. Please click on the notification button, and yes, if there's anybody else that you think would be interested in this video, please share it with them, and I will hopefully catch you in my next video. So until then, thanks, bye.